Hey, what's up, squad? From Reach Suite, I'm Colin Smith, and you're listening to Cold Ones. It's the podcast with chilly questions and even colder ice cream. Today, I'm excited to announce that we're joined by Phil Harrell, my dear friend. You know him as the CRO at JW Player, former VP of Group Sales Research at Forrester, and your favorite Duke Devils baseball team captain. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Thanks, Colin. Excited to be here.
Man, I love that background. It does not get old.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm lucky to have an office in a boathouse.
It's like the nautical basilica.
Nautica Basilica. I haven't heard that term used to describe it. That's awesome. I'm going to start using that. Nautica Basilica. All
Tell
right.
your wife, hey, I'm heading down to the nautical basilica. I'll catch you in a few hours.
Love it. That's exactly. I got my ping pong table behind me. I wish it's a little hard to be in an office though because I don't have anybody to play with. So on the weekends I play with my kids, but during the work week it's hard to find anybody to play ping pong with.
Dude, you can pop it halfway, play against yourself.
That's true. I
You,
could.
you are your greatest teacher and enemy.
I love it.
Well, look, Phil, as always, we strategically, I say strategically select ice cream for our guests. We don't just send you something random. All right, we put some
Okay.
thought behind it. And so
Love it.
first ice cream, before we jump into rapid fire personal questions, we chose the orange creamsicle. I
Love
love it. The idea here is most folks don't know
it.
that you actually played a big role in HubSpot in the early days, pre-IPO. You were the VP of strategic sales, which I believe was overseeing the enterprise segment. Is that correct?
Yep, it was my title was VP of corporate division, which was the enterprise segment. But yes, I led them the HubSpot team that was tasked with getting us into bigger customers. HubSpot had started as a small medium business or a solution aimed at marketing automation solution at smaller companies, 1 to 10 employees.
Yeah.
And what they needed was they wanted me to come in and help them build out their enterprise division.
Yeah, and I can't think of HubSpot without that bright orange. And so I said, I got to get the orange creamsicle for Phil. That's your HubSpot,
I love it.
if you will.
I love it. And I like creamsicle, so it's good. I'm going to eat the whole thing while we chat.
Good stuff. All right. Well, Phil, we always do and start the conversation at Cold Ones off with some rapid fire personal questions. I like to say, chief revenue officer, CEOs, that's usually the folks that we're talking to here. They are talking heads on LinkedIn. People give them a lot of respect. We always, I think we put folks over the pedestal, forget they're humans too. And we don't get to know you on a deeper level. And so this is an opportunity to share a little about who is Phil outside of the title, the success, the career. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hit me.
What kind of car are you driving these days, man?
I'm driving an Audi Q7.
Geez, the Audi gets a lot of love on the Cold Ones episodes, man.
That's a good car.
It is a good car. 75%, I think, of the Cold Ones folks are Audi drivers.
Very comfortable car. Love it.
Good German engineering, right?
Yeah.
What this one actually was inspired. This question was actually inspired by Mark Roberge, who was one of your former colleagues at HubSpot. What gives you anxiety, man? Like, what causes you stress on a day-to-day basis, or on a week-to-week?
I mean, on my personal life or on my professional life? Because lack of pipeline is probably causes me the biggest stress on a day-to-day basis. But I think that probably is the thing that causes most chief revenue officers stress is pipeline, right? So that's from a professional standpoint.
Anything that as you've gone through life, you've noticed like this causes me a lot of fear. This really stresses me out. Anything you want to share there? Anything interesting?
Well, I think, the stress comes from, I mean, obviously the roles we're in, right? We're paid to get results and have big goals. And we feel responsible for our people, on our teams to help them succeed. So ultimately companies can succeed. And that's a big part of stress when you're in a role like this. Your job is to help serve people around you and make them successful. So I think that's just by its very nature. We've all chosen a profession where inherent to it is stress. And I've been fortunate to be at some companies when things were growing great and the opportunity was perfect timing, like Akamai Technologies or HubSpot. And I've been at companies that in difficult moments where it was a lot more challenging. So I think that's very stressful, but that's an everyday part of what we signed up for when we determined that we wanted to have a career in sales.
Yeah, no doubt. It's I remember my first sales manager when I graduated from college was like, your life will be on 3-month increments. And I was like, oh gosh.
Right.
Thanks, Kevin. Funniest celebrity, we'll lighten it back up. Funniest celebrity encounter.
Actually funny, but it was probably the most amazing for my wife and me was we were driving out to Montauk. My wife's parents are from Port Jefferson, and we drop our kids off there. I had 4 children at the time; they were very young. We'd go out to Montauk, which is out on the eastern point of Long Island, and we were sitting in a diner, just a random diner in Amagansett, and I got up to go to the bathroom and was walking back to sit down with my wife at the booth we were in, and the person right behind her, who was back, she was almost touching, was Paul McCartney. I mean, Paul McCartney, there's famous, and then there's super famous, and obviously he is on the super famous part of the equation. And I wrote a note on the napkin. I said, "Don't freak out." I wrote, "But Paul McCartney is sitting right behind you." And that was a pretty amazing experience, just to be so random. It wasn't funny, but it was just, I don't know, just amazing to have somebody that famous sitting there. So that's probably my most famous and sort of entertaining celebrity encounter.
That's awesome. Paul McCartney definitely is an A1 celebrity. I think you and Adam Tizan, the CRO of Payrix, we need to connect you guys because he's also driving an Audi. His funny celebrity encounter was also Paul McCartney.
It
Uh,
was? Really? Wow.
so
I
he
thought
and
I
his
was being original. I thought I was being original.
no,
Maybe
you are. This is just I'm connecting y'all via email. You guys have a lot in common. Yeah,
well,
this was like his wife went shopping and he was like, I'm gonna sit outside. I'm not gonna go into this last store with you. And she's shopping with Paul McCartney. She comes out. She's like, well, I'm glad you sat outside. I just shopped with Paul McCartney. And he comes walking out.
that's incredible. Love it. I can't
It's-
wait to talk to him about it.
yeah. Okay. Final question. What is the most recent purchase, clothing, otherwise it doesn't matter what it is, over 250 bucks?
Wow. Over $250. Well, I don't buy a lot of clothes. I'm not into really
Doesn't
clothes.
have to be clothing, by the way. I just throw that as a category.
Trying to think what I even purchased recently over $250. Can't be mutual funds, can it? Or index funds.
There you go. No, that counts.
That's sounds awfully boring. But how about last summer? Bought a jet ski. That was fun. So that was a year ago. But I don't know. I'm not someone who buys a lot of. I buy a lot of books. I read a lot. I'm fortunate that if I need clothes and I'm desperate, my wife usually thinks my wardrobe is in need of an upgrade and she'll buy me something. But I don't have to do a lot of shopping, which I don't really enjoy anyway. So
Dude, the jet ski counts. What was the old comedian said, if you're sad, you go on jet ski because no one's ever frowned on a jet ski. It's a lot of fun, man. We have jet skis where I grew up and taking them out, ripping them
there's so
around.
much fun. You know why? Because it's so social. It's a
Yeah,
great opportunity for you to spend time hanging out with your friends, tooling around the water, and have friends on the back of it. So yeah, they're a ton of fun.
yeah, that's a good summer activity. All right, so we are transitioning from personal rapid fire into the professional fun, really diving into some unique experiences you've had, Phil. And we've got some questions lined up for you.
Okay,
You
great.
can switch over to ice cream too.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna have to reach down and I gotta do some scooping though. I didn't scoop in preparation. So while you're asking me questions, I'm gonna open up this. This is what you guys provided me. It was this huge vat of vanilla ice cream. I don't, if you guys think I'm gonna eat this whole thing in the sitting of the podcast, you are mistaken. Because I will
It's
not.
for the family. It's shareable. It's shareable.
I mean, that's all nice. I mean, to be on a podcast and get creamsicles and some vanilla ice cream, that's pretty sweet. So I'm reaching down to get my ice cream scooper, and I'll scoop a little ice cream and
Well,
shoot. What do you got for me, Colin?
we don't get too worked up now, Phil. We picked old fashioned for you, but it's not for the reason you think. It's because
Okay.
a big part of today's conversation is about the old fashioned chief revenue officer versus what the modern chief revenue officer.
Right.
And when I came across this, I said, "Oh man, this is a big part of our conversation today. I got to get the old fashioned Tillamook vanilla for Phil."
I love it.
All right, so let's jump in. So you've been a revenue leader, then you went to Forrester and helped lead their role, their sales technology
Research and advisory practice. Yep.
and then you moved back to the chief revenue officer role. Tell us a little bit about that unique path, just generally, before I jump into some pointy questions there.
Well, I'm very fortunate. I mean, it was a really good path. I mean, I really felt like I love learning. I have this relentless curiosity is what I call it. And I love to, and I felt like I could really benefit from working for, it was a really serious decision. So I went into serious decisions to lead their sales research practice and to help sales leaders. So chief revenue officers, global VPs of sales, senior VPs of sales, to help them with their biggest challenges. And I knew that if I did that, I would, in the course of teaching and helping and giving advice, I would actually learn a lot. It gave me an opportunity to step out of an operating role. We forget sometimes as chief revenue officers, we are so busy with our day-to-day, so trying to execute, trying to meet with customers, trying to get to our numbers. It makes it hard to step back and reflect on the things we're doing and have a chance to really assess the things you're doing well, and also have a chance to say, you know what, there might be better ways to do this, and have the time to really think strategically about what could you do differently as a chief revenue officer. So I looked at it as an opportunity really to go back to school and really learn and really get a chance to satisfy my curiosity for what is the role currently, where could it go, and I got a chance to both help some amazing chief revenue officers with their biggest challenges, doing advisory work on things like go-to-market alignment, doing advisory work on organizational design, which is super interesting, and go-to-market alignment is super interesting, and two huge challenges that companies deal with on things like also on sales process, marketing process, demand generation, comp planning, but actually to write research, to think about what are the best practices, how do you codify those and help others. And that was with serious decisions. We got bought by Forrester, acquired by Forrester, which was a great outcome for the company. And I stuck around and ran Forrester's sales research division, helping revenue leaders like chief revenue officers, revenue operations leaders, sales enablement leaders, their executives with their biggest challenges. And it was an extremely satisfying role. And honestly, I would recommend that people think about doing something like that. I think there's huge benefit of being an operator, but then taking yourself outside that role, having a chance to step out and say, let me think about the best way to do this. Let me teach others. And in the course of teaching, you learn yourself, and then go back into an operating role, which is what I'm in now as chief revenue officer of JW Player. So I feel very fortunate to have had that experience of sort of operating for 25 years and then doing 6 years of advisory and then going back into operating for the last 2 years as chief revenue officer.
I really like. I totally agree. One of my personal goals is to be a professor at some point in my career. I think there's a few reasons. One, how lucky were your clients to have you as an individual, right? Like, no, so many great analysts and advisors and consultants out there, but they didn't do it. They never stepped into the fog of war, but you really did it. And so good on Forrester, serious decisions for looking for operators to bring into that setting?
Well, it really wasn't me too. It was really Serious Decisions should get the kudos because that was their model. Their model was to
Yeah.
hire people who had done the role in both sales leadership, marketing leadership, product leadership to advise the leaders on the other side. And we all know in sales leadership, it's almost like it's critical. You have to have experience. Sales leaders have a hard time paying attention or really thinking of for getting advice from people that have never done it before. And so I think that was a really great model that Serious Decisions had set up, was hire people like me who'd been an operator for a long time that could advise others and had the credibility of having been in that seat and had the same struggles, and to be that sounding board and that person to advise those chief revenue officers. So I feel very fortunate to have been part of that as an experience in my background.
So Phil, I'm curious, you talked about not only advising, but actually writing and publishing research as a part of your role.
Mhm.
What, I guess, what project or what study do you feel like made the most impact on how you're operating today as CRO at JW Player?
That's a terrific question. I think it's something called the insights-driven sales system. It was a piece of research that my team and I wrote, and what it was about was thinking about what is a leader of tomorrow need to be, or actually today and tomorrow need to be putting in place to be successful, to build that revenue engine, that repeatable, predictable, scalable revenue engine that I think we're all trying to build where we are. And the whole research was predicated on the idea that insights are what's critical, not just data, because I think people talk a lot about data. But in order to win in modern go-to-market, you have to have amazing insights that are derived from data. And it's these insights that help you as a CRO, which is effectively a go-to-market architect, put in place an engine that can give you the growth on a consistent basis, year in, year out, and make it predictable and make it scalable. And the idea of insight-driven sales system is first you have to put in place great processes that you first put in place that are end-to-end, meaning you're thinking about the revenue engine, not just from a sales perspective, you're thinking about it from the first time a prospect interacts with the website, and then all the way through to when they become a customer, and then obviously the customer onboarding, all the way through when they're an ongoing customer. And that you need these end-to-end processes that connect the sales processes, the marketing processes, the customer success processes, so you're looking at end-to-end. And on top of that, then you need systems, very strong systems that are technology systems that connect all these processes. A lot of times people think that technology is a panacea, but really the technology can help automate processes that have been put in place. But if you have bad processes, then technology will automate bad processes, which is not going to fix the problem. So you need a view of that end-to-end technology stack that automates those processes. And then from that technology, data and insights are derived because you have this great data set, which allows you to understand that prospect from the moment they touch your website. You start to learn that 360-degree view of what they're interested in, from which you then use that information to personalize the interactions, both on a marketing front and on a sales front, on a customer success front, to give them that buying experience and that customer experience that is differentiated for what they're trying to do. And if you have those things in place, if you have terrific processes that are end-to-end, not just on sales, but across the whole go-to-market, you have the systems and technology infrastructure that allows you to automate these processes to accelerate and personalize interactions. Then you have this data layer, which is quality data that's shared. You don't have data systems and data silos that you have a lot in companies today in their go-to-market. But if you've broken down those silos and you connect it all together, now you have the opportunity to provide a best-in-class buying experience, which I argued in that paper was essentially the differentiator in the market today, is can you provide your buyer with a better experience than your competitors? And that's what it comes down to. And that means, for example, being able to respond quickly when they ask for something, turning something around quickly, whether it's information about your products and services, whether it's for a contract, whether it's for a quote. The companies that can quickly respond and anticipate those are going to have a huge benefit. And that whole research was dedicated to the idea of that. How do you do this as a revenue leader? And that's what I've done since I got to JW Player. I've been fortunate to have had a chance to step out of that operating role, think about all these things, advise others, and then come back into the role and put in place many of the things that I was teaching others, which is obviously a lot harder than teaching others. It's actually doing it, but it's been really gratifying.
So I don't know. I'm a visual person. I'm seeing this like layer cake, and bottom layer is your processes, like you said, end to end. Start from first touch. I call it first touch to expansion and beyond, right? Because we're all in recurring revenue, so it really is the first touch, which is the first time they come in contact with you at a booth, on your website, with a salesperson. Shit, even it could be driving down, going into downtown San Francisco and a billboard. But through expansion, or not customer signed one, but like expansion deal one, and then and beyond. So I'm seeing this layer cake. So that's the process. Then I see next layer down that you mentioned. That's the systems, which is the technology stack that help drive those processes and automate. And then you have the data and insights. I'm gonna push on this a little bit more, Phil, because I think this is really interesting. Let's take one slice of that cake, whatever place you want in the buyer's journey. It doesn't matter if it's top, middle, bottom, funnel, wherever you feel most comfortable talking about on the spot. Let's take one slice. Can you break down an example of the process, and then how you would architect a system, and then what insights you might glean from that based on rolling this out?
Yeah, like for example, let's look at the top of the funnel when someone first interacts with your website, and how much data are you collecting about that person, right? So making sure that And then when they're a lead, that's been, is it routed to your salesperson quickly? So the old way of doing things is marketing is if somebody's on the website, they're interacting with your website, you don't know a lot about them, and those processes aren't connected to the sales process. So the handoff to the SDR is very cold in terms of that the SDR gets a little bit of information. This person might be interested in something you're doing, but has very little insight into what that person was doing while they were on the website. And that SDR has maybe that initial conversation, and their initial conversation they don't capture the interest or the notes or the things that that person is truly interested in, and that doesn't get passed along to the rep. And then the rep, when their first conversation, is asking some of the same discovery questions that a SDR had already asked. And what is the experience for that buyer? The buyer's experience is saying, well, I was on your website and I was looking at certain product pages that should have indicated that I was interested in a specific area, or maybe I was on solution pages or industry vertical pages.
Yeah.
And then when I talked to the SDR, they seemed to ask me very high level discovery questions, which they didn't know much about what I was doing, even though I'd been all over their site. And then when I talked to the AE, I got the same questions from them that the SDR asked me. And then my first presentation the AE gave me wasn't customized at all. It was sort of a bland, one size fits all presentation. And I think when you look at that, that to me says that that company hasn't figured out how to connect the processes, how to make sure there's a handoff from a technology perspective, and hasn't been able to build that 360-degree view of saying, look, the marketing department saying, hey, look, this person's been on our site. Here are the pages they went to. Pass that on to the SDR. The SDR having a warm conversation says, these are the things that you seem to have indicated through your data in terms of what you were doing on our site, or some of the clues you've left through the blog articles you've read, whatever, that you might be interested in, and have that warm conversation, and then get routed to the AE and pass all that information along.
Yeah.
And that AE is not starting from scratch. They're starting from that profile of that buyer that the marketing department has been building and is handing off to sales, and sales continues to build on that profile. But now, through the fact that there's this good data, the company is learning and is able to personalize their interaction with that buyer based on better data. That sounds really easy and obvious. It's like, yeah, but in order to orchestrate that actually is very hard. And most companies do a very poor job of doing that. They have different processes for marketing that don't hand off well with sales. They have different systems. The data about a prospect lives in this marketing automation, doesn't connect well with the sales system, and it's not being used to provide that 360-degree view of that prospect or that buyer, from which the company can then derive and interact with that person on a more personalized basis. So that's just sort of the top of the funnel, but that's one example. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, it does, Phil. I think, I remember, I don't know if it was like my 7th or 8th grade science teacher said, do you know the difference between data and information? And class like, what? Data is the hard numbers, the quantitative metrics that you're reading. Information is making sense of that. And that's always stuck with me, whichever science teacher made that connection for me. I think companies do, especially nowadays, on average, probably a good job of collecting data.
Right.
In fact, they can't help it. Like every system that they buy collects data for them. I think companies really fail at converting that data into information, or what you call insights, which is actionable.
Yep.
Actionable. Instead of
take action. So it's insights that are actionable, and then actually do something with
training
to do something to make somebody interact with them in a better way.
Because I see three versions of this. This is what we implemented when I was in my role as head of mid-market sales at Viz. It started, let's call it Gen 1, was we were collecting in Pardot all the pages that the buyer went to, right? And just in a list form on their Pardot plugin in Salesforce.com. Okay, that's just data. No one knows what to do with that, right? Gen 2 was we said, okay, we're gonna bubble up the pages they went to most and highlight those. Okay, that's kind of an insight. We know like the top 3 pages. Gen 3 was we said, okay, we're going to then trigger playbooks on how you should have a conversation with a prospect based on, right? So you see 3 different kind of iterations kind of maturing.
I love it. That's what I'm talking about, and it's then across the entire go-to-market.
Yeah,
and that's what, that's why I think the chief revenue officer. Maybe this moves us into the next part of what you were thinking about, so the future of CRO. But I think that's where the chief revenue officer job is so I think important, is being able to look at. And I'm fortunate that at JW Player, I have sales, I have marketing, I have partnerships, I have customer success and customer support. I have a whole go-to-market truly. And I think having someone who has that, and chief revenue officer now, that title is being used in lots of different ways. And somebody says chief revenue officer, it could mean that they own sales. It could mean that they own sales and customer success, which is very typical. But in my role and what I used to advise companies on is it should own the whole go-to-market, because I think you need someone overseeing that entire end-to-end process, the entire end-to-end infrastructure systems and the data to look at it from that point of view. And so, that I think is part of what has to happen for the chief revenue officer in the future as well.
Well, Phil, you walked us right into this next topic here, which is you've worked at 7 different organizations, startups, or maybe more than 7, but 7 organizations specifically in the revenue leadership role, from startups to multi-billion-dollar organizations and everything in between. You've had the opportunity to scale with the best of them. HubSpot's, you're building JW Player, which is a big name in the video monetization space. And I'd like to ask you, based on being a revenue leader to now, or to then being an analyst, or kind of stepping out to being a revenue leader again, compare and contrast the CRO of yesterday, the CRO of today, and what I want to know really, Phil, what behaviors were really helpful and successful back then that are no longer successful. People need to stop doing them.
Well, I think that at the very highest, one of the things I talk about all the time is that I think in yesteryear, years past, being a chief revenue officer, or even a global VP of sales, was just about one thing: growth, growth, growth at all costs. That's what it was. Your job was to find a way to hit your number and help the company achieve its revenue goal without any thinking about cost.
Mhm.
I think what has changed dramatically is that, yes, of course, companies still want that chief revenue officer to make their goals and to help the company grow. That's your central focus. But the bar has been raised, and you have to do it in a way that allows you to also think about costs. That you have to think about not just how do I grow cost efficiently? And
Efficient.
so, yeah, can I make that number and that goal that I have? Can I make it in a more cost efficient way than just hiring more reps? The playbook has always been you get your quota, and in order to get to that number, you go out and hire a certain number of reps every year in order to get to that number.
Yep.
And so, and that's worked, and that made sense. What CROs of today and increasingly in the future need to do is to think about lifetime value to CAC, customer acquisition cost, and use that as a guidepost for them to think about, okay, maybe the playbook is not just to hire more quota carrying reps. Maybe the playbook is to segment my customers more finely and make sure that I am able to achieve a LTV to CAC ratio of 3 to 1, that for every dollar it takes me to acquire a customer, I'm generating $3 of profit. But that might mean in certain segments, it's actually not beneficial to hire a rep. It's actually more important to automate. It's more important, for example, for small business customers, that hiring more people, all that does is really lower your LTV to CAC, because you can't support those customers profitably in that way. Or it means that you can't automate, but you need to use a lower cost region. For example, one of the things I've done here is leveraged Macedonia. We have a company we bought in Macedonia. We'll be able to leverage that as a very effective. They've got great talent, and I shouldn't be saying that on this call to let other people know. But it's a small country, but they've got good English, good talent, and I've been able to leverage that in a cost-effective way to manage my smaller customers. And that's the kind of thinking. It's not just about grow, grow, grow. Let's just hire in-region resources to get to that number and that quota without regard to cost. It's thinking about, wait a minute, we've got to be smarter about this. We've got to architect this in a more cost-efficient way. How do I segment my customers more finely? Are there ways for me to use both low-cost countries that can service those smaller customers or acquire those smaller customers? Can I use automation? Can I use self-service? This whole product-led growth PLG movement can be used effectively for a certain segment of customers. So I think you have to be a lot more sophisticated as a chief revenue officer and thinking about how do you grow, but how do you do it cost efficiently? You have to think more like a chief operating officer. That's what I think. More financial terms, more understanding of your budget, and not just, okay, let's grow. And if I make my number, who cares about where I ended up with the cost? It's let me do both. And I think that's putting a lot of pressure on chief revenue officers to think more like architects and less of, I'm going out there, rah, 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 I'm just here to motivate and also just get out with customers. You got to have that more sophisticated approach, a more financial understanding, that chief operating officer role. So hopefully that helps you.
Yeah, no, Phil. So what I'm hearing is it's a transition from being the growth revenue, just rocket ship,
Yep.
person, gong hitting, just boom, boom, to more of a keeper of the organization's financial health, right? In
Yep.
many ways, because the LTV to CAC ratio is something that, Phil, I don't. You might be a little surprised here. Not a lot of revenue leaders are talking that language right now. I get on with a lot of revenue leaders. We sell a demo automation platform that is exactly what you're talking about here. It is great for SMB and commercial. It is. I mean, that is our highest ROI use case, because your SMB and commercial, they do not want to meet with sales. They're typically end users or one level above end users. They don't want to meet with sales, and really, it's not a good use of your sales leader's time. And so we get on and we talk about, and efficiency and rep productivity are words that are being thrown around. But LTV to CAC ratio, I know when I hear that come out of a sales or revenue leader's mouth, that they got it. They're caught up. Okay. And I guess when you think about bringing this efficiency, you did just share a great example of a low cost country. How are you thinking about automation though? How are you thinking about automation in your sales motion?
Well, I think it comes down to, you said the word up front in our conversation, you were talking about buyer's journey. And I think it comes down to segmenting your customers and prospects, and then understanding the buyer's journey that they need. So putting it back on, what do they need? What information do they need to make their decision? Because let's be honest, back when I started in sales, I controlled the sales process. They needed any information, they had to come to me, white paper, whatever. Now we don't control the sales process anymore. We have to react to what buyers and serve up the information that they're looking for in their journey, because information is ubiquitous, because the internet is incredible. So in order to do that successfully, I think you have to make sure that you are thinking about the buyer's journey and the segments of your customers and prospects. What is the buyer's journey that they need? For example, certain small business customers, like you said, might say, I don't need to talk to a human. I really don't. Like, this is pretty simple. It's not expensive. It's a very simple solution. I can evaluate them on my own. And if that's the case, then you design a no-touch sales process or buyer's journey, where you just say, okay, I'm going to use automation to serve up information to those customers as they go through their journey, make sure I'm using data to surface and personalize the interaction on an automated basis. Maybe there's a set of customers that are slightly bigger. They have a little bit more complicated needs, mid-market, for example, and they want light touch. They want to talk to a human only when they're at a certain point in the process. They can do a lot of investigation on their own early in the buyer's journey, but they might want a demo from a human, or maybe they have some questions, and you can design that light touch motion for your buyer's journey to give them what they want. And then obviously you have your enterprise customers, that the reason enterprise customers typically want more human assistance is, one is because they have more people involved in the decision on their side because they specialize more. So think about buyers. If you're at a big company, you can afford to have someone who is only about procurement, or only about legal, or only about a certain aspect of the technology. So you have many different roles that are involved in making that purchase decision. We're at a small business, that's not the case. The person wears multiple hats because they can't afford to have lots of people. So you must match then your sales process and the people in the go-to-market that you are required to provide them with information. You're going to need experts that can go toe-to-toe with their experts on their side. So that means you probably need more humans involved and throughout the journey to help them make that decision. So that's how you're thinking about, how do I design the right go-to-market motion? Again, with an eye on cost. Can I reduce costs on the automation on the low end? Can I use light touch, maybe low cost countries or channels, right? Partnerships can provide very good scale for certain segments. You got to use that in the right way, the right route to market, direct partnerships or e-commerce. And then on the enterprise side, you might say, I'm going to really invest heavily in the enterprise team and provide the expertise and the higher value, the higher priced folks that I have to hire, but they're going to generate much bigger deals. So the LTV to CAC is still going to work. So I think that's a way to look at it. Again, back to the revenue architecting and back to the use of automation. But I do think automation should be viewed relentlessly by thinking, even if it's only used at the low end to start to automate the entire buyer's journey, thinking about, how do I push myself to move it up? Can I take pieces of that go-to-market motion and make it more automated, even if I'm using a human? Because ultimately, that's a way to provide a better experience and possibly lower your costs. So
I love it. I love it, Phil. Last question on that front, very pointed, very quick. We talked a lot about segmenting by organization's size when we're thinking about buyer's journey. Do you think that's sufficient, or do you think there's a kind of a cross filter that we need as well when we think about buyer's journey? Like, obviously people do verticalize, and I get that,
right.
but for the buyer's journey specifically, is there another filter, or do you think segment by size is enough?
Well, I think there's many ways to segment, right? It's not just by size. It could be based on number of revenue, number of employees, for example. It could be based on use case, but it has to be something that is that you're able to, from a data perspective, obviously, you're able to assess that, see a potential buyers where they would fit in that. So you can do it in many different ways. The key is to pick a method that works and that makes sense for your business from a segmentation perspective. And that's not easy. It sounds really easy. It's not. The data quality is a problem for a lot of organizations, and it's always continually changing, and to keep up to date with that. But back to that whole idea of that insights-driven sales system. So yes, to answer your question, you can definitely do it a different way other than revenue size or even employee size. There's many different ways to segment, but pick a method, and then the differentiation should be because of the way those buyers are interested in buying are different, and I can design a go-to-market motion that works for them. So
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And over your career, I know that you've had a lot of success.
I've also had failures. I think many of us like to only talk about our successes. When you've been in business as long as I've made mistakes, I've had failures. I've been very fortunate to be from some really good companies, but I have things that I've made mistakes on in my past, and that's just part of learning.
That's going to be Cold Ones part season 2, is we're going to revisit everyone. We're just going to talk about failures. That's it. We're going to talk about learnings.
Well, I mean, people who say they've never failed are just,
Oh yeah,
maybe there are out there, but that's not me. So
no doubt. My last question just on that, though, is you have had a lot of success, and of course you've had some failures as well, but that's a team sport, right? Revenue leadership, selling has become even more of a team sport over the last decade. Who are some support roles, man? Who are some folks, reps, SDRs, sales engineers, ABM, marketing managers, demand gen? Who are some folks that come to mind that have had an outsized impact on getting you to where you are today?
I mean, like individuals that you mean?
Yeah,
Or
like some shout out. We'd love to give shout outs. That's
yeah. Yeah, like Mark Roberge at HubSpot. He's an amazing leader. I know you had him as a guest on your show. Amazing leader. George Conrades at Akamai was CEO of Akamai. He was a mentor of mine, instrumental in helping me learn, which was fantastic. Earl Gallagher was the first VP of sales at Akamai. Was amazing leader in helping me with how to learn how motivation, inspiration. He was just an amazingly inspirational leader. So I've been very fortunate to be around some terrific leaders. I know I'll think of it afterward, all these other people that I should have mentioned, but those are 3 names that sort of jumped to the top initially.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Phil. You made it. No brain freeze. You had some Tillamook. You crushed the creamsicle, man.
I did.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
For joining us. Before we leave, tell the audience, man, I'd like to make sure you get a little platform here. What's going on the next year? What's Phil excited about?
What am I excited? Well, I mean, I think we're at a really interesting point as a company. I mean, JW Player, video technology provider, we are having really good success with broadcasters and advertisers. We were traditionally a vertical play for publishers, and now we're moved into broadcast and advertising, and we're seeing a lot of success in those 2 verticals. So I'm really excited about where we are with those different verticals. And I think on a personal front, my youngest is 16. I have 3 kids in college, and I'm excited to spend a lot of time. Hopefully, with my kids will come back this summer and spend time with my wife and me. And we're going to do a reunion with my older brother in Norway. So there's a lot of fun things planned for the year.
Well, enjoy, man. I know that summer's right around the corner and the lake is nipping at your heels. I can see it.
I can't wait. I'm fired up. My buddies and I are all fired up to get out in the lake and wake surf and have all the
That's
other jet skis and all the other fun stuff that we do up here. So appreciate the time though, Colin. It's been very interesting. Great question.